Hello everyone and welcome back to the R&D Podcast. I am your host, Rachel.
I'm Delia.
This episode we're going to be talking about how to heal from a broken heart, you guys.
Oh, I know. We have like the same expression, but I think this one's a really good one because I think often everyone processes heartbreak and loss so differently. Some people will get very excessively into something, like maybe it's alcohol, maybe it's smoking weed, maybe it's going to the gym, but it's excessive. Maybe That's true. Doing a lot of things, which, by the way, going to the gym is not a bad thing. But I think that when you're going into a healing, when you're coming from a broken heart, there's this feeling of loss, like you lost time, you lost a person you loved. There's probably demise that you're feeling. Maybe
it's like a hopelessness.
I
right?
know, like what am I going to do? How am I going to pick up the broken pieces? It's a whole lot of roller coaster emotions and rides. I always do say this. In my opinion, I feel like when you're with someone, most of the time, not always, you're breaking your person down. Like, he doesn't do this, he doesn't do that, he doesn't take me out, he doesn't tell me I'm pretty, he doesn't tell me this. Like, all the things, you're just breaking your person down, right? When you break up with the person, you're like, I remember he would make reservations, he would wake up in the morning, he would take out the trash, he would, all
it's
the
like
things.
those stories you hear about when someone dies. We talked about this last season.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It's like when someone dies, it's like when they're alive, they're like, oh my God, he's such a grouch,
I
he's this,
cannot
he can't
stand him.
He dies, and you're like, oh my God, he was such a wonderful neighbor, or whatever.
I always trip out on the time. I don't know, everyone always says it, and I think it's kind of funny. They're like, the way he touched me, and I was like, he touched you? Oh God. Just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. But at the end of the day, I think it really matters, like, how the person operated in your relationship, and then now you are mourning like what he did do instead of what he didn't do. And so that's what makes you mourn even more, that person's absence. And I always say, you know what, you got to hone in on what you're going to do to make yourself better. Okay, what are we doing tomorrow? What are the goals? What are the plans? What are the aspirations? How are we tackling this? And also healing from it, by the way. But I think a lot of the time we all have dreams and aspirations on, maybe we want to go on a trip. Okay, what are you going to do to get to that trip? Or maybe you want to launch a business. What are you going to do to launch the business? And I think it's just fulfilling your mind with positive things and not doing the whole getting under one and get over one.
Oh, no.
I think that's like the worst advice that anybody can give anybody.
Yeah.
Because what do they say? What is it? Hurt people.
Yeah.
That's what I've been hearing lately.
Yeah.
That's not even my quote, but I'm just saying I can see how that really correlates with this particular topic.
Yeah, I think that it's important to not run from the reality
situation
of the pain, but also to give it a deadline.
Uh-huh.
And so, there's this thing right now going around. It's like, oh, you got to hold space for others and just don't judge them, don't give them advice, just let them, go. And Simon Sinek said something really interesting about holding space. I've been studying it a lot because I'm doing this talk coming up here, and it's on holding space as far as like the theme. And I was like, well, what? How are they using holding space?
Yeah.
And Simon Sinek said, holding space is this. Normally, somebody gets stuck in a hole and they get stuck in the mud. And you're like, oh, here, let me help you. Let me throw you a rope. Let me take your hand. Let me help you. And then you're getting dirty with that person, trying to get them out. The second thing that we tend to do is give them a bunch of advice.
Right.
Oh, it's so easy. Just do this, and you'll be fine. The third thing is actually holding space, which means you say nothing, you do nothing other than get in the mud and sit in it with them. And I'm telling you this story to say it's important to actually sit in it and feel it and cry the ugly cry and write the letter that you're never going to send and all of that kind of stuff. And it's important to go through that cycle of emotions, but then to come to a point where I'm done and it's all action. And even if the tears are still flowing down your face, but you're stepping forward and building your life forward, I think that to me is one of the most important things I've been able to do in life, whether it's mourning a relationship, mourning like loss. We've all had major loss in our life, and we get struck by these unforeseen circumstances in life. And at the end of the day, we got to go with the punches.
Yes.
And if somebody leaves you, be it a husband, be it a man that you are dating and you thought for sure he was going to propose after 6 years and he just moved on and he doesn't, take everything as a sign of a blessing. Understand life's rejection, right, is God's protection.
So
and
true.
it hurts, but
It
you
hurts.
got to put a limit. I say put a time limit. Just say for the next 30 days, I'm going to feel all the feels. I might walk around in my sweats, whatever that may be. But at the end of that day, at the end of that last day of the month, you are done. And it's time to create your new normal.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. You know, I think it just depends on the type of loss that you endure.
Yes.
But I do think that it's really important for you to always remember that you are a person of value. You are very important, and you are loved. There are a lot of people that want to be around you. That this isn't the end all be all. That just because this relationship ends doesn't mean that, you know, God isn't working his magic behind the scenes. And sometimes we have to go through this heartbreak to build on wisdom, to have, you know, you become more wise and kind of even spot out the red flags like, you know what, I didn't like that about, you know, this particular relationship. And so I can see how that could be a deal breaker moving forward. A lot of the time we don't want to ruffle feathers. And so we let a lot of things go by, you know, we let bygones be bygones. We bypass a lot of things because we don't want to have to be the one to ruffle, you know, feathers. But in the end, you know, heartbreak sometimes is inevitable, and when it happens, it is the worst feeling in the world. Some people will, you know, just really indulge in food and then they'll gain the weight. Some people really go hard on the alcohol and just completely be just plastered and not knowing what time or day it is. Some people just, you know, there's different ways that people cope with loss. Because I always say, you know, heartbreak, divorces, separations, those are losses in life.
Even if you are married, okay, I'm talking to the married ones, okay, or the divorced ones, I should say, or the ones 1 foot out, wherever you are watching this. You know, even if you know your husband's not good for you, even if you're so sick of him, even if you're like, oh my God, I know he's up to freaking no good, I can't stand him. Like, I know this ish is freaking Titanic and it's coming to an end. Even when you feel all the things and you know all the things and you agree with him that this sucks and it ends, I have seen women feel emotionally crippled by that when it ends. And I myself, you know, with my divorce, I remember having to really quickly assess, like, do I mask my feelings and remain strong so that my sons can see that I'm strong? Or do I let them in on what this actually looks and feels like so that I understand I'm raising boys into men so that they know when they want to go do some shady stuff to their wife, what the aftermath looks like. So I personally went in and I was in bed for 3 days, off and on, you know, crying and I feel sorry for myself and all these things. And my oldest son looked at me and he was so heartbroken over it. And he just said, Mom, but you know, you guys had the problems and you know that you had the problems. Like, what? And I said, this is my mind accepting the reality of the situation, like accepting that it's over, and the heart takes time to catch up. It like kind of bleeds, right? So it's understanding your own psychology and understanding that, hey, it takes time to accept that all these plans you made for your vision, grandkids, whatever it might be, this picture perfect thing, it's over.
Yeah, it's changed.
But it doesn't mean that there's not something wonderful
happening. But I also do believe, though, Rachel, that it depends on how things end and did you get any warning signs. Because I think that if you should get warning signs, then you see it coming, so you prepare for the blow. I always say you wouldn't go outside if you saw a storm coming. You wouldn't go out with flip-flops, right? With that being said, you wouldn't prepare your heart if you saw that things weren't right. You would not protect and do some type of, you know, feeling.
But the devastation
shield.
Still comes.
It still does.
So I've met so many people that I, over the years, listen to them gripe about their husbands, like in the worst way, where I'm like, this woman's going to cheat on him, or something's going to happen. And then it ends, by the way, and they are devastated. Like, when I tell you devastated, they're absolutely devastated. Like, like the crying and all the things. And it can be confusing because I'm like, I've literally listened to you for 10 years, act like you hate the man. You know, but they're like devastated. And I think that because we still, no matter what your situation is, you still have that Instagrammable photo at the holidays, you know, with the whatever.
And everyone processes life different too, though. And so this is not to knock anyone for any reason, but I do believe that, you know, when a person has seen that he cheated with the neighbor and he cheated here and he did this and, you know, he's got a bad, you know, attitude or what have you, I think it would be a little bit easier for you to process that break versus him being Mr. Wonderful, you not seeing it happen. Like, you had no idea it's coming, because I've seen that firsthand when all of a sudden, you know, you're blindsided by it, and or he just decides to just take off one day and says, you know what, I'm going to my parents' house. I've seen this. I'm going to my parents' house, and the guy never returns. Now you want to see heartbreak, or he moves in the person, you know, the niece into the one house, or, you know, the family member into the one house. So I think there's different levels of heartbreak depending on what you're going through. But I do believe that, you know, you have to hone in on maybe getting into some Bible studies and getting in closer to your faith, getting closer to God, praying to God.
And also, by the way, really start to look at your friends groups and your friends circle, because there will be a little handful, not a big old bunch, a little group of women, it might even be one, that you can literally cry to or open up to, who's going to say, you're going to be okay, like, you're going to be fine, like to pull you out. Because what the other ones are going to do, they're going to be like, girl, guess what? I saw him last week.
Oh,
he was at Wiener Schnitzel.
Yeah.
And blah, blah, blah. Oh, girl, guess what? I heard from so-and-so that they ran into him and that he was at the club. Like, there's these messengers that come and they bring you all of the 411, like,
it's
play
all this
by
cancer
play
that they're bringing you.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I hope that you get out of this episode of, like, how to sort of overcome or process heartbreak is to really have a meeting with your friends, the ones that you really trust, and say, I need you to hear me out. I don't want to hear anything about him. Like, I need it. And also, I don't want to mention him at all. Like, let's just talk about great things. Let's talk about fashion, business. Like when I'm with you girls, and I had to have a meeting with my friends. I said,
me too.
When I'm with you three, because it was three of them at the time, I said, I just want to have a good time. Like, I just want to have lunch.
Yeah.
Like, talk about all the things with your kids or whatever's going on. Not about, like, oh, like, I saw him, or, like, how are you doing, and what are you going to do with, you know, the condo or whatever. Like, we're not talking about it.
Yeah. And I think that that's a really great way to protect your heart, because oftentimes I think that they don't realize that they're actually hurting you more than they're helping. And I think it's important for you to shield yourself, to say, you know what, if you see him with a woman, if you see him with men, if you see him here or there, I don't want to know about it. Please don't tell me. And I had to do the same thing, by the way.
Yes.
And, you know, and everyone processes, you know, heartbreak a little different. And I will say, you know, I've said it on first season, second season, and now I'm sharing it this season. You know, for me, I recognized that I was going down the path of becoming an alcoholic. What pulled me out was, you know, being very intentional of going to the gym in the mornings. And sometimes I would do double days as far as going to the gym, because I needed to get the clarity. I needed to get my mind right. And I started listening to a lot of audiobooks to kind of get me to a better place. And I remember sitting down with myself and having a whole conversation with myself, telling myself, how is this going to move the needle in the right direction if you don't do the work to get yourself back up? Because at the end of the day, we are going to fall. We're human beings. Things are going to knock us. But what are we going to do to get up? And it's okay to be, you know, sad. It's okay for you to cry. It's okay for all those things. But there comes a point, like you said, okay, I give myself 30 days. All right, you eat ice cream for 30 days. I hope not, but I'm just saying. I hope not, because, you know, that's not going to be a good thing, because then you're going to have to, you know, figure what you did, damage control, right?
Yes.
But whatever that is within that timeline, you have to figure, okay, after that timeline, what am I going to do to get up? And I think that that's the message. Like, what am I going to do to get up? What am I going to do career-wise to move the needle in the right direction? My family. Do I have any goals and plans to buy a house, to buy multiple properties, maybe rentals, maybe start a business, whatever it is. And I think if you can, you know, project a life that hasn't arrived, I promise you that it becomes like a softer blow, that you're like, all right, at least, you know, I'm out with the old and with the new. And also with what you said about the people that are in your ear. I know I shared this before, you know, there's going to be certain girlfriends that are going to be like, listen, you got to, like, hit 31 flavors. You got to get out there. You got to get with all these people. And let me tell you, that's not great advice. I think that you have to take this time to get to church, get to God, pray to him, you know, get closer to your faith.
This is your healing journey.
Yes.
And you're going to heal a lot more than probably what's happening with the end of your marriage, you know.
It's so true.
And I think, you know, like nurturing your body, nurturing your mind,
your soul, your
spirit, all of it has to come into play. Yeah. And you're going to come out 10 times better at the end of this whole thing.
I agree.
One of the things that I think I notice is, like, it makes me nervous, or a red flag for friends of mine, is when their marriage ends, or they're in a long-term relationship, right, and it ends, and they go, you know what, I know that there's someone better for me. Mm-hmm. And I urge you, if you're sitting there saying, I know there's someone better for me, I urge you to switch that to say, I know there's something better for me. Because if you're stuck on it has to be someone, you're going to be sorely disappointed. You could potentially end up landing on a soft spot to land because you're lonely, because there's not a lot of guys out there, because they're all jerks, because they're all the same, because. And so don't sit there and say, I'm not going to be complete unless I'm in a relationship with someone. And I keep hearing that, like these women leave their marriages or whatever, or long-term situationships, and then they're like, I know there's someone better for me. And I'm just like, no, there's something better for you, because you can have a wonderful life where you're not necessarily reliant on your identity being tied to having a relationship. And we know the pressures of being single, remaining single, and having people go, well, what's wrong with you? And so there's this narrative. You're married to a jerk, and they're like, oh my God, I don't know why you're still with him. You should leave him. The marriage ends, and then it's like, well, why aren't you with anybody? Like, what's going on? Like, and so people question everything
on everyone.
And you know what? Like, I could be like, well, I'm in a relationship with, my Lord and Savior. Like, people's journeys are so vastly different from one another. Also, don't judge. If you're more like me, you're more conservative, and you're like, you know what? I'm going to lean into my faith. I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to trust his process, God's process. You can't look at your friend who's dating somebody new every Tuesday and judge them either, because you see that. Don't do that. Everybody has their process and their journey, and we're all sort of striving towards the same thing. The path we take, though, it varies, and it should be your version. Don't look at your friends and go, all right, she's speed dating every Tuesday, and I'm not, and I'm going to go do that. No. Do what
feels right
you and feels right for you.
And I'm going to add to that. I also do agree that it depends on your inner dialogue too. What is your inner dialogue saying to you? Like, you weren't good enough, you're a failure. Why did, your marriage ended because of you, because you suck, because you're this, because you're fat, because you're not pretty enough, because your hair, because of, like, whatever the case is. And I think that you have to remember that. I always say this to most people. It's like, the inner dialogue that you have with yourself is the most important dialogue, by the way, more important than the people that you're going to speak to.
It's the loudest
because no one's going to be as mean to yourself as you're going to be to yourself. So you always have to remember that if it ended for whatever reason and you're going through heartbreak, do not sit there and blame yourself because you aren't pretty enough, because you aren't, fit enough, because you're not young enough. Like, you are all the things and you are enough. So you have to remember to have beautiful conversations within yourself and, get to a better place. And, like you said, don't be judging other people. If that person decides to go every Tuesday and date different people, that's on that person. And I think that at the end of the day, you got to hone in on what makes you a better person. And we're always trying to move the needle in the right direction. I always say every day is a new day to hit the reset button, because every day, you could do some crazy off the wall things. That morning you could just wake up and say, today I just decided to be crazy. So every day I think we have an opportunity to make each day better and move the needle in the correct direction of whatever it is, whether it's growth in business, growth within yourself, growth with God. And don't sit there and think of what you're lacking, because oftentimes heartbreak also comes from what you think you lost. And that's the unfortunate part.
It is. And there's people around you that you don't even realize are going to really help you through this journey. And there's people that you thought should have been the ones,
and they're not.
And they're not going to be there. And so usually when something like that comes to an end, it's such a blessing. It's such a monumental time in your life. To me, spiritually, it just kind of means that God is at work in your life and he's heard your prayers. There's something wonderful for your life that you prayed for, and God said, all right, granted, but these people can't come. And you don't know that at the time when you're making these prayers.
Because God's working his magic in the background. And that's the way it works.
And so if you are young and you're watching this and you just lost your high school sweetheart or whatever it may be, let's just say, guess what? That is a blessing. It's unfortunate and it hurts, but that's a blessing. If you're in college and you guys thought, oh my God, as soon as we graduated, we're going to get married and have kids, and he decided, he's gay or he wants something else. Like, guess what? All of it is a blessing.
And I think it's because it's a blessing, because it also builds wisdom for you. And that's what carries you through most things, because you become wise with years. And that's why a lot of the time, when you speak to older people like grandparents, and you sit there and you're like, they're just a wealth of information. It's not necessarily that they're not, it's just because they've been through so many things that their wisdom is what they're sharing with you, and they're sharing with you these moments because they've been through it. And when we're young, we think that that's the end all be all, like, no, I was supposed to marry him and he was supposed to be my forever after. And at the end, you know, God's working his magic, and you got to trust the process.
The blessing is that he makes room in your life for the things that you truly desire. Yes. He makes room for the new things. And I always say this when things seem to not be going my way. I always say, you know what? You know, his vision for my life, his plan for my life is so much bigger and greater than my vision and plan for my life. So and I always you refer to the little illustration of the little girl, and she's holding onto the dirty little teddy bear like this, and Jesus is behind, you know, he has a big old huge bear behind his back, and he's like, trust me, hand me the bear, like hand it over, like give it up, let it go. Yeah. And really that's what it is. We're meant to let go and let God. We're meant to feel the feelings, feel the things. Don't deny yourself that. It's, you know, you love this person. It ended. Maybe you love the idea of what they represented. But I will tell you this from my little contribution here is that also what you might realize is that you were just in the habit of having them in your life. Mm-hmm. You were in the habit of meeting them after work. You were in the habit of, maybe you're married to him, right? So like for divorce, for example, you were in the habit of, okay, getting home, picking up the kids, making him dinner. Okay, now we're going to go for a jog. Like, oh, we're going to watch, you know, Deadliest Catch on TV. You got to record the shows. Like, there's so many habits that you form with your person that you don't even realize that you're forming. That then when that routine gets knocked, you feel disoriented, you feel lost. And a lot of that lost feeling comes from the habit of them. Yeah. So you might love them, you might have been in love with them, you might have love for them, but something tells me that the habit of the other person is the hardest thing to
let go. I think that in Spanish they have this saying, and there's even a song, la costumbre es más fuerte que el amor. So, you know, just having those customary things that you're doing is a lot stronger than the actual love that you feel for the person. It's because you've gotten used to them being there, and it's not so much that you love them, it's just that you're accustomed to that, and it's become business as usual, or that's become part of your life, but you got to let go of whatever that was.
And make new traditions, and form new routines, and really shake up your life in that way.
I love that.
And go, okay, all the broken pieces, what can I collect here? And make a new portrait out of it. And that's what you should really be doing for yourself.
I agree. It's a good one.
All right, that's all we have for you today. Cheers.